to do this. And we do it for their ORV to run it on public lands and we charge hunt licenses, but I get, if they're gonna significantly profiteer off this as a non-resident, I got a lot of constituents that like to see $5 or $10 resident license and a $250, whatever that limit is for a non-resident shed hunting license. So if you could ask that opinion later.
And I agree. I mean, that a lot of people bring up that issue of the license, but then the idea of that delay 5 days, delayed 3 days, whatever it is, that's the easiest solution because then these professional horn hunters, the gold rush is over. You know, yeah, there'll be people come in, but it'll be not in the amount. You know that it's the one thing that I've always wondered about what's the impact we went back on is on May 1, what are you in the middle of? Sage grouse nesting. And we have ATVs that run all over everything. They're not regulated at all. It's not even on 2 tracks. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
You know, and
You're right. It's very necessary.
yeah. Anyway, the locals don't want to be regulated, but they darn sure would like to see some outer space.
Do it on a 90-10 split.
I'd like 80-20.
Any, so just gonna ask for Attorney General's opinion on that. Okay. And then we'll follow up at some point.
Yeah, it'll take a while.
Okay. I think at this point, we'll see if there's any public comment and public comment on stuff we did today. Anybody online? Okay. So, yeah, so if you want, if anybody wants to speak, just, we'll have time here, so just holler. Carson, you're up first,
I want to talk to Larry.
like one-on-one?
Well, no, just so he can hear. He was actually.
Oh, I got you, all right. Oh, it's like, all right, well, we might need a different room for that. All right, Jim Shell, you're up.
Is there nobody else? I just wanted a chance if I need it.
Do you need it?
Nobody else needs to do it? Nothing?
There was only 2, so. Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you, yeah,
might as well take,
it
this
was
is your
still to me
chance.
like, after a lot of discussion today, and a lot of testimony from a lot of good people, Wyoming residents, people trying to make a living, trying to make a difference here. You were charged with taking something new. Commission is not the legislation to get something done, and I applaud those who want to move forward, continue to fight, work towards a equitable solution for everybody. And, you know, while I see some progress, I also see it seems like a lot of good comments have just absolutely fallen on deaf ears, like.
What was that?
Inconsequential. Yeah, you're right. So, I mean, well, why are we all beating each other up here if we're not gonna get somewhere and get something figured out? And I don't think it's gonna happen overnight, but gosh dang it, I swear, there's gotta be a way to get something done that's gonna be good for everybody. And the economy of the state of Wyoming, our local economies, our state economies, the regional economy, it all develops around mom and pop businesses too. It's not all oil and gas and coal and wind. So with tourism, holy cow, we're the sponsors of that. We're the ones that carry that torch for Wyoming. And nobody's paying our advertising or our marketing. And that's another concept I keep thinking. I keep hearing as well, gosh, your marketing must be off. There's all these tags out there and there's all these hunters wanting the tags. Everybody wants to hunt, but you can't get hunters. Well, your marketing must suck. That's not true. We're all booked out for 2 to 3 years. But now, because of this Point Creek and how it's all rolling, I know for myself, I have to go through my 23 and my 24, and what I've already got booked for 25 on my schedule. I'm gonna have to revamp the whole thing. And I'm telling you that if other, we don't want to be like other states. We want to be Wyoming. We want to continue being the equality state. We want to equality. I'll be darned. There's a word I just said. Why does non-resident DIYers or resident DIYers or outfitters or nobody should have a corner on the market? But there should be some equitable equality. I'm telling you, we could come to some kind of agreement. And I'm telling you this, if this collective minds of people, good people that are putting their time in on this task force, if you all can't come up with something equitable, something good, God help us if it goes clear legislation, do something different. And I want to say one more thing too, and if it hurts, so be it. I've missed one of these meetings because of my livelihood. I couldn't be here. When it comes to meetings that I need to be at, like our Wyoming meetings or state board meetings, I'm on my 4th term of state board meeting. It was an obligation and an honor for me to take the 4th appointment from the governor, be on state board affairs. I can proudly say I've never missed a meeting, and I've been to every meeting with some really dire situations where I maybe shouldn't have been there. I fought some bad storms to get there. I did without personally to be there. I can't say the same for this task force. It's disappointing to me, and I applaud those that are here and put their time in all the time. But it's disappointing to me, as important as this task force is, with what it's been charged with, that every single meeting, there's anywhere from 3 to 6 members of this task force absent. On Zoom, that ain't cutting it. You need to be in this, son of God. You need to be in the fight. You need to be in the solution chamber. And when I see that meeting after meeting after meeting, it is a major disappointment to me. And I can promise you all these people back here. Now, it's not just outfitters wishing that everybody was here to be learned up. It's the resident sportsmen. It's the non-resident sportsmen that we're their voice for the outfitted non-residents. The DIY non-residents, they don't care much for us either, because we're not fighting for them per se, but that's not true. I mean, guys, we've got an opportunity here to get something really significant done. We're charged, you folks are charged by the governor to come up with some solutions. And I gotta say one last thing. You know how hard it is for guys like me and Fox TV and all of us to sit back there without a voice and just listen to what's going on, if we can hear it. One of the sorriest venues I've ever seen for a public meeting like this. When the heat comes on, you can't hear shit. So, and I submit that people sitting right here in this circle don't hear half of what's going on. It's just that way. Everybody here ought to have one of these. So enough of me, I'm dressing them down. I apologize if I've stepped on anybody's feet or toes or fingernails, but that's where I'm at. And I think this is a great group of minds. We can get something done, but it would sure be great if all the minds were involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So, hey, just to address that, we try to get everybody, the schedules and all that kind of stuff cleared out months ahead of time, but it's tough with 18 people.
Talk into the microphone, Russ.
Can you guys hear me back there? Anyway, Adam did want me to read this. My time is running pretty tight to get to Sheridan for the baseball game this evening with the updated information provided by the department, private land holding percentage, landowner license wording, public comment, etc. I feel like we're in a better place to address the issue with some focus. I do want to echo many of the task force members that are unable to really make a single issue out of any topic as everything is tied together. Sorry, I won't be able to participate this afternoon. He wanted me to read that verbatim. So anyway, that just kind of falls on your comments, Jim. And I know that others just, hey, they had things scheduled before we even scheduled this. So, we're doing the best we can on that. And
Yeah, I would assume the last 2 meetings, it's called cabin. It's a priority in my my district.
Well, and I'm on another governor appointed board, Governor's Council for Impaired Driving, and I will be actually missing that meeting in June so that I can be here. So somebody's on that board probably gonna be mad at me. Anyway, next we have cars, no, Art Ash, you're up. Well, I'm sure that Senator Hicks will be back.
Right outside the door, we'll yell at her.
It's outside.
Oh, well.
I've got corn outside.
Horse trade.
But you got to see how hard.
Go ahead.
All right. Earlier, Larry Hicks had mentioned something about that hybrid hydraulic that's separating the units up and divvying them up and the pressure that it puts on your better units. So in Colorado, that 80-20 that we have on the 6 points or higher, most of those units at this moment in time, some of them, the really good ones in the northwest part of the state are 30 points, takes 30 years to find the detect. The one that I'm in, 26 points for the best tech that we have, and 18 points for the lowest tech that you can get. So just be aware of that. Now, as far as state income, it's like the licensing companies, they have to have application fees, so on and so forth. They have to apply every year. If the state wants that, it's probably a good idea, because more than likely that non-resident will die before he gets tagged and goes out.
It's true.
Your residents, that Point Creek is going up as well. So if the offset and even an 80-20, that high point in my unit that takes 26 points, it's at 20 for a resident. So it's only 6 points higher for a non-resident because there's a smaller pool and they bounce around the state. But I would just be aware of that, unless you're prepared for your outfitters to have to kind of mentally battle that every single year for a possible full point every year. I've kind of figured it out where it's about, in sometimes it's a full point, but most of the time it's 2/3 of the point. It goes up every year. So when you talk to somebody, you actually have to calculate that all in. So there's something.
So I think to illustrate your point, so even if you had a 50% outfitter set aside and it's 201, 1 or 2 and 10, right? You're
We
still,
don't have an outfitter set.
no, I'm just saying, even hypothetically at 50%, you're still gonna be 25 or 26 points to draw those outfitter set asides. Is that the way you see it?
I would see it the same way. Yeah, and there's, up there in the northwest, there's probably 1 or 2 really good ranges that produce high quality bulls. And then there's 1 or 2 outfitters that have survived it over the years. They get the remainder of those clients, and there's truly 1 or 2 a year. They drop significantly. It's the opportunity in your state. I don't know if I would go that route.
Chairman, well, while you're up there, just a quick question. So as you heard the director say, we may have to have the conversation about resident points, bonus or preference points for deer, elk, and antelope. Do that. You know, Colorado's got a preference point system as for a while. From your perspective, if we're having that conversation, what's your advice to Wyoming? Stay the heck away from them, leave it random, use bonus points, use preference points?
Waiting period.
Waiting
Waiting
period,
periods.
combination of all of the above.
Yeah, it depends on what pile you want to step in.
Are you saying they're all piles no matter what we do?
Yeah.
Great. Good waiters.
You know, I don't have a problem with what I deal with because I've been doing it for so many years that it becomes a non-issue, but when an outfitter joins in and he's either going to join or he's gonna buy because of that, and he knows those situations. For a recommendation, I know it's good across the board. It's just, that I'm an opportunity guy, but I don't have a recommendation.
Any other questions for Ash? Thank you, sir. Okay, Carson, you're up.
All right, I'm Carson Keyline. I'm a landowner and I work for Outfitter too. Senator Hicks, you keep going on about how everything, you can't find one thing that'll work. Everything's got to be a combination of things. So, like everyone keeps saying, they're kind of, you go, you ask all those outfitters, 90-10, then an outfitter. I'd say, why don't we fix the broken draw first? I have a ton of friends that, they're not vocal guys, but they do all hunt, and they don't want, per se, to see a point system because they see what that does in other states. What they want to be able to do is draw a tag in a limited quota area with low percentage odds. I went through for the last 5 years, and I sent them to Cy already, but for the last 5 years, if you take elk, you guys talked about the waiting period. If you put a hard cutoff at any area, 40% or less, within every 7 years, all those tags will be drawn. There won't be, and there'll be leftovers as well, that you guys can get back into and draw, or if there's an increase in applications. It comes out, there's about an extra 4,000 tags at the 7-year cutoff. So your increase in tag applications, because guys are not going to be able to draw those tags instead of feeding into hard areas and just going out and getting general.
A 7-year waiting, how much of a waiting period?
If you go 7, that takes care of all areas under 40%. It comes out to,
You're just talking about elk, correct?
elk is 7 years, antelope is once every 5 years. That takes care of every area under 40% for antelope. Deer is a different ballgame because the numbers are dropping so fast. 5 years ago, you could have used a cap between 40 and 9% and got a deer tag every 5 years. Now that number is going up because of draw odds and the number of population going down. And your tough to draw areas, but is there in elk, if you go between 40 and 9%, there's 41 different tag types that are affected. That's not just areas, there's some type 1s and 2s thrown in there. That's 27% of the different limited quota tags, that's type 1s and 2s and 9s that would be affected that route. And that'll give you draw odds once every 5 years. Say you leave the bottom 9% of the areas, leave them still random draw for everyone. You can have your chances at that. But like I say, on elk, if you go once every 7 years, all the tags will be drawn. Guys will get a chance to hunt these limited quota areas. And that's the main complaint that I hear from the non-vocal guys, which makes up, I think, a vast majority of the actual resident hunters. They're not the ones out there getting frustrated and being super vocal about it. They just want to be able to draw a good area here and there.
Carson, did you run that on 124 or 30, 31 or 32?
Yep, what area do you want?
124.
Let's look at 124.
Let's see, 124. The draw odds on 124 on the type 1 tag are 3.31%.
Yeah, I'm not seeing how every 7 years.
Because, so every 7 years, the way it works out. So every 7 years. Okay, so if we go 40% and under, there's 5,664 tags that were up in these hard to draw areas that we're talking about last year. That was the number of tags listed available for residents. There was 31,000 people that applied for. So if you divide that out, 7 years, those 5,000 tags are gonna get.
That's a
Yeah, but-
statewide.
So that's a statewide
That's a
average.
statewide average, not an area average.
But guys were willing to hunt a little bit different areas. Most of the guys that hunt in general, they're trying to draw a hard tag around them. So they got an opportunity to put in several different tags right there that they can get into. They're gonna get a good tag within their area. These areas are all spread out throughout the state. It's not just one area,
So
one
Carson,
part of the state.
under your assumption, a couple things I want to ask.
Mhm.
So if I draw my 40% or under limited quota tag, then I can't apply for 7 years for even a general?
No, you can hunt general still, and anything over 40% is still fair.
Okay, so anything over 40%, so we're in an area that's at 45% right now.
Mhm.
And you have all these guys that drew that can't apply for a 40% under, where do they go next year?
I'm saying most of those guys already hunt general because there's 40,000 people that applied for tags. And there's only 17,000 that win, but 31,000 of them, or 75%, are trying to draw 25% of the tags.
You don't think they'll go to another limited quota area that's a little easier to draw? That's where I'm going.
So on those ones,
I think that Larry-
out of the 41,000 people that put in for tags, only 20,000 of them applied for a second choice. They're not trying to go hunt somewhere else. And out of that, there's 10,000 of them that wasted a tag. So what I call a wasted tag is putting in for, say it's your second choice. If it's a 50% draw odd or less on the first choice drawing, and you put in for that area, I would call that a wasted tag. You're not gonna draw that tag. So 10,000 of the 20,000 people that put in second choice tags wasted a tag. And the numbers are almost higher than that. So there was 22 areas last year that had 100% draws, and on second choice, 35 that had 50% draws or better.
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys, they're not trying to put in, they're just, if they don't draw this area, they're hunting general.
Do you take it on an average of, your 40%, did you average it over a certain amount of time? Because I think there will be some, if there's only 500 or 1,000 of those people that put in for those other areas, like Larry's saying, it's gonna skew the numbers. So you're gonna have some going in and out of that 40%. And that, we've talked a little bit about that and how we would.
Yeah, and that's why I would rather see it at 7%, because that leaves an extra 4,000 or 5,000 tags roughly that will be soaked up by the other guys that line. But elk's a little different. I mean, elk guys, they go hunt where they go hunt every year. If they learn where a place is, and that's where they go hunt. Yes, they're willing to try to get into these special areas for the opportunity and a great bull, but a lot of them just go to the same place every year because they can't get into those other tags. And that's what I hear guys talking about. They want to be able to draw a Wyoming tag. That's the push for the 90-10. But 90-10 doesn't really increase their odds that much in these areas.
So
That's a
Carson,
statistic amount to lose 2.5 million for the state.
I got another question for you. So if you looked at, when you do this and you run the scenario, so you got a unit that's, let's say, for demonstration purposes, it's a 33% chance of drawing. 1 out of 3. 66% don't draw 33%. Those guys are gone, right?
Yes.
But they have to wait for 7 years before they can apply again for one of these hard to draw units, right?
Yes.
So the next year, if you operate under the premise, it's just going to be the same guys that apply. And now there's only 66 guys available for those 3 tags, or for those 33 tags. So they're gone. If you operate on the premise that they're only going to apply for those, you get 3 years, everybody's gone. Everybody's now got to wait another 4 years and nobody applies for that hunt. How do you compensate for waiting program when you use up all that pool? Are you expecting a bunch of other guys to come in there and jump because now it's 100% guaranteed?
I would say
And then when that happens, it's no longer in the hard to draw unit.
that's the point of this, is to help the resident sportsman out so he can get good tags. I would say, like I said, the guys, there's, like I said, 40,000 people are applying for 17,000 tags. And 20,000 of those guys don't even try anything. They don't dare even put in for the second chance. So most of them, they're willing to go general, but those guys that are applying for the hard to get tags, I would contest that they're willing to go, okay, I can draw this area, I will go try it out because now I have a chance to get a good.
So they will jump around.
I would think they would, because you're trying to draw the hard areas.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that could potentially address that is that hard to draw area, all the hard to draw areas in the state are designated by whatever number, wherever you draw the line, 40%, 25, whatever it is, based on the last 3-year average. So if that scenario plays out, you're going to end up in a situation where it's going to become a non-hard to draw area. But I think what happens is people jump around and you're not, it won't be
Well,
quite
that-
that straightforward.
And that's my premise. They're going to jump, right? I thought it, Eric Carson, I thought you had said once they, if they can't draw that unit, they're gonna go general. But if that's true, you're gonna run into a scenario where you don't have anybody that's eligible for these tags. Then it goes back, it's no longer a hard to draw area, so I can draw it on my 4th year under the hard to draw scenario because it's no longer underneath. It's just, for me, until we understand hunter behavior, and that's what I'm trying to understand. Is
I know
hunter
my
behavior
friends-
gonna jump to keep filling in these units?
I know my friends that they're big sportsmen. They look at their draw odds and see what the last ones were, and they kind of pick and choose around into the good areas. So they will jump around into a good area, but if they can't get the good area, they're just gonna go general. They're not gonna go far from their house. There's some people that'll go from over by right where I'm at over to the western side of the state to go get up in those mountains and go hunt the wilderness and stuff. But I would say for the most part, people are trying to find an area around by them that they can hunt in, because they're not the guys out here spending all the money, and they got jobs and stuff, and they're not, a lot of times, they'll save up some vacation, but they want to go where they have good success. But they're willing to forego that good success on an opportunity for a trophy class.
I agree with that.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead. Well, no, I was just gonna say, just looking at elk numbers at units 25% draw odds or lower.
Mhm.
The numbers we have, I mean, for 3,850 roughly tags for residents, 27, almost 28,000 applicants. Yeah, by year 5, this 25, I mean, your odds go from 13% over all those to 31%.
But I'm saying your odds, the odds aren't gonna really, they'll change somewhat, and I would contest that you need to keep it more on like a 5-year average, because those odds are gonna get somewhat better. But keep a historical perspective on, these areas haven't really changed. The hard to draw areas are hard to draw. There's good public access or there's trophy class pools. There's a reason they're hard to draw. So these guys, yeah, they're gonna start picking and choosing around, and they're gonna look, okay, well, this area was 30%. Now, after 2 years, I'm probably gonna draw this area if I put it. And those guys can use first, second, third choice all the way through. So they're gonna probably end up getting one of those tags. They might get it on third choice this time around, instead of all these guys wasting tags.
Yeah, so I'm agreeing with
Yeah.
Carson. I'm saying on a more restrictive analysis of limited entry at 25%, you still go from year 1. I mean, you're more than doubling your odds by putting in a 5-year waiting period. And that's if you go up to the 40% or under, actually increases like that, you take more of those applicants out, it's gonna actually cycle through. So you're probably right, Brian. You get your biggest bang for your buck with a waiting period.
And that's, all the guys that I talked to, that's what they want. They want an opportunity to go hunt animals in their city. And that's where the push for the 90-10 is, but the 90-10 doesn't work for the outfitting and other guys. And I'd also say that, another thing, if you go and give that 40% of the special, just give the special tag to the outfitters, they're already taking the 40% as is. However, it's gonna help stop the point creep, because like these guys are saying, they don't have to keep putting in extra guys. You're gonna help your non-resident guy in the long run by slowing down your point creep, because you don't have all these flooded tags going into draws. Your high areas, yes, but those guys are, some of them might go with landowner or a guide, but a lot of those guys are gonna try to go DIY, because once again, you're into good areas that have a lot of public access. So, and then another thing, everyone keeps talking about all this stuff with the regular hunters. The landowner is getting forgotten here. We have 50% of the state and provide for 50% of the wildlife that we should test. Maybe not so much on elk, but antelope, I would say we're up there, if not higher. So you guys, I've heard you get mentioned of like a transferable type 6 tag. A type 6 tag does nothing for me. I can't sell enough that tag to recoup enough money. You let the bull tags go. Let those tags be sold. However, you make it so that tag is only good on the public lands leased by that ranch or any private land in the area. Take some of the pressure off of the public land that all these guys are complaining about. Oh, there's landowners all over the public. I'm running into them everywhere. Pull them back. If you have enough land to get a landowner tag, you shouldn't have to be out there hunting all the public lands for the rest of the year. That's what I would contend on that. And then to Pat's thing, he's talking about trying to get wildlife money. Well, on my place, I have 44 wells on my place, 12 reservoirs. Out of that, only 3 wells are on public and 2 reservoirs on public ground. This last year, looking at the water tables stuff, we're at 42% of levels. Where's all that game water? All the wells that the ranchers built. If you give them a tag that they can sell, now they can afford to maybe put an extra well in a year or something like that. I also happen to sit on the Thunder Basin Grazing Association's board. Little over 1 million acres down there. We drilled 3 wells last year on 1 million acres. That's not doing anything to help get wildlife water. The ranchers are helping to provide this. So if you give them a tag that they can sell, but restrict it, bring it back and say, hey, you can only hunt public ground leased by your ranch, or you can hunt private ground within the area. But get them off of the public ground to help alleviate some of the pressure and create more opportunity for the non-resident hunter. And then I would also say, if you take the non-resident tag special, raise the fees, take it to 1,500 like these guys were talking. Then the state, with that extra $250 that they're gonna make off all these tags, the state can go drill wells on state land and provide water for the wildlife, which you guys are tasked with, and create better habitat.
Anybody have a question for Carson? Okay, okay, thanks, Carson. We got Joe real quick, and then we have Representative Sweeney on the line.
Hey, I've been listening, I'm sorry, I missed a lot of discussion today, but I've heard a lot of ideas kicked around about bonus point, preference points, waiting periods, all this stuff, and I guess my question that I'm not hearing is, what do you want the system to do? Like, you can't put more tag holders in the field. Obviously, the Game and Fish decides how many tag holders at the field. And maybe you could with a few things, but are you trying to put more pressure on private land? Are you trying to get more individual hunters in the field? So instead of one guy with 5 tags, you have 5 guys with 1 tag. Like, what are we trying to do here? Because all of these systems do different things, and they're going to have different effects. And if you aren't designing for an effect, you're going to end up with the wrong system, or you're going to install a lot of songs, which is what I think is going to happen. But if you pick a direction, I want to give new hunters. I want to give new to the sport. You know, not the 12-year-old coming in. I want to target the 30-year-old coming into the sport. I want to provide this kind of opportunity. I think then you can have a meaningful discussion, but if you're just going to talk about systems, I think you're going to get lost. So I would just encourage you to have a really robust discussion about what you're trying to do, because a lot of these things just do niche things, and you need to decide. And then I think the system could be designed that would be effective.
You know, I think that, Joe, I don't disagree with you one bit. I think the problem is that the word, what is opportunity, is 1,000 different things, like you just said. And we can go through everybody in here, and we all might have just a little bit different what opportunity is, and they're all of those things. So can you just figure out a system that does them all, and then we'll just implement it?
Yeah, probably have a better job.
No, I'm just kidding, tongue in cheek. Anybody else have any questions for Joe? Okay, thanks, Joe, appreciate it. Okay, Representative Sweeney, it's on. Representative Sweeney, you on there?
Yeah, finally. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pat Sweeney from Casper. So my biggest concern, I haven't been listening all day, but the last conversations, my biggest concern, even when we addressed the whitetail mule deer bill at TRW, one of my main concerns is budgetary, that in all your discussions, whether it's 90-10 set aside, however, that the economics of it all end up to not to hugely negatively impact the game and fish. So the game and fish has to come back as a department to the legislature for general funds. Because that's not going to be taken well. So that's my biggest concern in discuss, but in the end, that's also got to be a reality. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Representative Sweeney. Appreciate it. Anybody else? All right, so, yeah.
Just one comment, and I think, and I just, as a historian, kind of like my colleague down here, one of the old guys, so. I think we have to be realistic from a standpoint. Even under a scenario where supply is fixed. So let's just assume that we're gonna have 500,000 antelope for the next 20 years. Demand is gonna continue to go up. Does anybody not believe that? As our population grows and there's gonna be no more demand. So it gets to this, and I'm all for hard to hunt, something, anything that increases odds, but I think you have to be realistic. As the historian here, when I first started applying for bighorn sheep permits, there was a 3-year waiting list. And then it went to a 5-year waiting list. Then we went to a point system. My point is no matter what we do to wait today, the circumstances tomorrow is going to change. And there's going to be more demand. That's what we see nationwide. We see this year over year. So as we get into these discussions about what we fix today will come back, won't be fixed tomorrow. And I think we need to acknowledge that. At least keep that in the back of your mind and say, how long can we keep these? And I think some of the guys talked about it earlier with the different systems from 88 and what it looked like. And then it is always going to change, folks. You know, we don't issue 300 ram permits in the state of Wyoming. That was a declining supply in the face of an increasing demand. We will never come up with a system that's going to last in perpetuity. So what we need to do is figure out and be just a little bit forward looking. So hopefully there's not a task force 5 years now trying to undo and fix all the things that we didn't have a little bit of foresight in going forward. But it's going to change. There's going to be more demand, there'll be more discussions, there'll be more proposals out there. I just think anything that we come up with, we need to look at what is our horizon? Is it today? Is it 5 years or 10 years? Do we want to try it? We can't see what's going to happen 10 years from now. But at least what is our horizon? And I think that's important when we get into these discussions. Knowing the fact that having been through 3, 5 waiting periods and all this stuff. So.
Yeah, Larry, that's tremendous. I do. I think that there is a layer of a litmus test on any of these that we move forward as a recommendation, that we kind of backed ourselves into what's it going to take for this no longer to be applicable, and to try to have that foresight and recognize that. I think that's very wise. It's good. Dwayne?
I just wanted to clarify on my comment about businesses in Wyoming that are going to be affected by the decisions we make. I know we got representation on this task force, but from the public, we haven't gotten that representation. That's what I was talking about. And somehow we need to do that, because I think that when we make a decision, we want 90-10. And all of a sudden, business and small communities start suffering. We're going to hear about it. There's no question about it. So how do we get those people? I don't know. I mean, I try to talk to as many people that could be affected by the decisions we make to voice their opinion, but we hear from landowners, we hear from outfitters, we hear from resident sportsmen, but we haven't heard from the people. But I mean, that's
because they're working.
That's going to affect.
I said it's because they're working, but I do think though, I think that Southwick and Associates economic study and the impact that that has, this industry that drives that type of impact to these smaller communities you're referencing. I think I'm very mindful of that. And I would hope all of us are.
Well, I think on the surface, after the discussion we heard today, something that's singular, like you just said, 90-10, just singular, I don't think has any chance. So, I mean, if that's the worry, without being combined with 1 to 2 to 5 to 6 other things that makes the impact different, I don't think there's, that I just don't know that it's there. Go ahead.
That's where I want to go.
I know you do.
Suggested that the subcommittee come back to us with the grand compromise. We never answered that question, so
Yeah, so I think
we should do it.
yeah, no, I think we need to, I think tomorrow we can start that grand compromise for 30, 45 minutes, 6 hours. We can start that conversation tomorrow a little bit, just so that everybody understands where you're headed, where some of the parameters are that you're going. Because I think that the impacts that Dwayne mentioned are real. The impacts behind us are real. The impacts to the state, the statewide, the economics are real. But also the opportunity for somebody to draw maybe every third year or fourth year are real. And that opportunity actually is probably holds more weight for a lot of resident hunters than you probably can imagine in some of those hard to draw areas. They know that their neighbor's not going to draw. It might be more important for their neighbor not to draw every other year than it is for them to draw every 50. I mean, I know that sounds funny, but it's true. And so, but I think there's something to be said for that. And if we can combine that and then allow some more opportunity through, get rid of that cap on the general, I think there's a lot of things that can really alleviate. We just have to figure out how to put them together. And I'm an opportunist. I know Pat wants to get something through, but I think we can do it. I think we can get a something that works.
Reasonable accommodation.
Reasonable accommodation. Because the alternative is we don't get anything, and we're stuck with bringing individual bills that are very, very difficult to pass.
I gotta say, that's okay. That's me. I mean, there's not a silver.
No, there might not
If I've learned anything in the last year is these issues are complicated. And the thing with wildlife is everybody's passionate about it. So, sometimes there's no silver bullet and there is no solution, and what we're doing currently is okay. But if there's grand compromise, let's get it the hell out and let's talk about it.
Yeah, all right.
Copy that.
I guess meeting adjourned. We'll be back at 8 a.m.